Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, and we are here to start with the economic development session. Before we start, we're celebrating this week the Maryland Economic Development Week. So please spend your money in our local businesses, statewide, but especially countywide. With that,
we seek every opportunity to turn those into housing, to turn them into other needs that our community has. That is our pledge. That is what's happening right here. And as we move forward, not only over the next 2 years getting this project done, providing more housing for everybody, there's more holistic work that needs to take place too. As we want people to move here and live here because of the rich access to transit, we also have to redouble our efforts to make sure that Randolph...
Join you virtually. So I'll turn it over to planning staff.
Morning, council members. My name is Bilal Ali with the Research and Strategic Projects Division. And in the spirit of brevity, I also have just a few slides to orient everybody to the retail market in Montgomery County. We have some spare slides as well in the appendix, so if you have any additional questions, feel free to follow up and ask. But then we'll turn it over to Bobby Boone, who can talk about retail in diverse communities and some of the work he's been doing. So for our first slide, we just have a snapshot of employment in retail in Montgomery County. We have about 4,000 retailers employing 63,000 employees based on our best estimate, and these are private businesses specifically. The 20% of the businesses have employees between 1 to 4, so relatively small, and over 90% or approximately 90% of retail businesses have fewer than 20 employees. So that sort of speaks to some of their space needs and sort of how large they are as well. Snapshot of the metrics in the county. There's about 38 million square feet of retail. The inventory has been relatively stable since 2018 over the last 5 years. The vacancy rate is healthy, supported by the fact that there hasn't been a ton of significant new retail development, but also by high demand. And the rents are just under $35 and pretty consistent actually throughout the county, which speaks to the strength of the suburban market that exists here and the demand that comes from residential development. Next slide. I'm in charge of the slides. So just to sort of orient everybody to the type of retail that we have, there's sort of different configurations of strip retail, whether it's in an I, U, or L format with different sizes to sort of indicate the type of center that they are. Strip centers are the smallest. Then you have neighborhood centers, which are similar. They're going to have smaller neighborhood-oriented businesses with some convenience and stores and personal services, things like that. Community center, you're getting bigger. You might start getting national brands and franchises. A theme and festival center is sort of just a permutation of a larger strip center. We only have one in Montgomery County right here in Rockville, the movie theater. And then getting into some of the larger retail formats, we have the lifestyle center, which is this sort of more modern mixed-use type development that typically comes as part of a mixed-use housing development with a lot of development to support it because you need that to underwrite it. Then, of course, we have our super regional malls like Westfield Wheaton, Westfield Montgomery, that are reconsidering their future, but they're certainly not dead by any means, and there's just a consideration of how to reposition them, but demand in these malls has been creeping up, and other than for some of the large box vacancies, the vacancy rate is pretty healthy within the malls as well. Then of course we have the outlet center. We only have one. These are regional attractions. They're very large. The Clarksburg Outlet Center is the one example in Montgomery County. Then you have big box sort of surface park malls and power centers, sort of like the Milestone Center in Germantown. And just to conclude with some thoughts, we have some data to support this in the appendix, and of course happy to follow up with any questions. But basically there's a lot of retail potential in suburban markets because a lot of people live here. And retail follows rooftops, as the old adage goes. So retail tends to follow new development. As long as there's new spending for retail to capture, that's where the market tends to go. And there's been a lot of out-migration to the suburbs from the urban core since the pandemic. New retail is likely to be part of mixed-use development because retail on its own may not necessarily pencil, and typically, again, these developers are seeking where growth is coming in order to provide more retail. And retail spaces are changing, so while the metrics are high, there's probably some looming vacancy in the future in that, businesses are getting smaller, they have smaller staff, they have some inventory, so the older form of retail is repositioning and changing, and so we need to understand how it's going to adapt going into the future. And like I said, a lot of the strong metrics are supported by the lack of new supply, because the rents aren't high enough, and so with the supply being lower, rents are high, vacancies are low. But again, that doesn't. It's coming with strong demand, but it's not necessarily meaning that we're getting a lot of new retail development that's commanding high rents and is immediately leased up. So with that, Bilal Ali, like I said, with the research division, if you have any questions, feel free to follow up with us over email, and I'm happy to answer any questions here today as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali.
And we'll move right on. Sure. Do you want to introduce your consultant?
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure Bobby has his own intro as well, but Bobby Boone, he is a consultant who supported this Retail Endeavors Community Studies that we completed in 2019. He is an expert in retail and has supported the county in several research initiatives, and I'll let him introduce his work and the study that he'll be presenting while I change the slides.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Again, Bobby Boone. I'm the founder of And Access. And Access.
Can you hold for a second? We can barely hear you.
Okay.
Maybe it's on your end, or the staff. Can they please give us 1 second? Can you speak one more time so we can test?
Yes, testing.
Yes, much better. Thank you so much.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, good morning. Bobby Boone, founder of And Access. And Access focus at the intersection of retail, real estate, and entrepreneurship, recognizing that many entrepreneurs are the tenants of these shopping centers, and they represent a large portion of retail demand, as well as they oftentimes are yielding the supports needed for goods and services within minority communities that have historically been disinvested, et cetera. Today, I'm just going to go over a few national trends, as well as diving into the study that Bilal introduced. But first, what we're seeing in Montgomery County is very indicative of what's happening across the nation. There's strong demand, consumer expenditures continue to increase, and then there are few tenants that are closing despite inflation. That really is continuing to drive strong occupancy across the different shopping centers, and really wanting to understand how that also is having a pinch for the debt of many of the consumers, where they're taking on more debt in order to afford the actual retail expenditures. Second, limited vacancy. There's less and less space available across the nation. It's not as much construction that one is informed by some of the other microeconomic indicators, such as those high interest rates, and there's continued demolition that really impacts that. Next, limited transactions occur. That's meaning the sale from one individual to another, or one company to another, and that really is for those that are above $3 million. When you have this high interest rate environment, the value of properties are devaluing. And then finally, for the leases that are occurring, you're having a lot of that being driven by 4 different sectors: food service, fitness, discounter, so it's dollar stores, et cetera, and grocery, and those tenants account for 50% of all leases. So when you see, a lot of new businesses within those categories, those are the categories in which, expenditures are high, in those categories in which businesses are able to sustain, given the changes in consumer behavior, such as e-commerce, et cetera. Next slide. All right. I know last week we talked a little, I mean, not last week, but last presentation, you all talked a little bit about office and wanting to showcase how, this relationship between office and retail is important. You see in suburban conditions that, when there's retail present with office, so being a majority retail business and having some office tenants, that there's very little change in office availability. So, that means that vacancy is remaining low. So that case is most prevalent in the suburban condition where, central business district, you have fewer tenants that are being able to maintain that space. And so, and this study is from one that included the Washington, D.C. metro, but alongside many other major cities across the United States, such as Boston, Chicago, LA, et cetera. This information is from CoStar. I thought it was like a great idea to, talk about this, and specifically as it relates to, how we're thinking about the role of retail, specifically as work from home and other things are prevalent in the future. So I'm going to introduce the Retail and Diverse Community Study and Access. We conducted this study in partnership with Partners for Economic Solutions and Ochoa Urban Collaborative, consultants that are very engaged in this environment. The purpose of this study was really to look at Silver Spring, Wheaton, Tacoma, Langley, and understand, who are those minority businesses and diverse retailers, and, what are their challenges that they are facing as it relates to the development of the Purple Line, other development and gentrification that might be going on within their communities, and how do we ensure that we can preserve and strengthen them. Next slide. So just a quick, geography check where we looked. Long Branch is called out here because this work built upon some work that I conducted with the University of Maryland, where some students pulled together a preservation toolkit for looking at policies and programs that could be spurred in order to support them. That work continues into the Small Business Anti-Displacement Network, which is also housed at the University of Maryland, which is a national organization of professionals that are really actively working on this subject. And so many of those insights are being able to be integrated within this approach. Next slide. We had 4 key phases, from understanding kickoff reports, data collection, where we looked at 40 plus business owners. We engaged with probably about 30 different retail support organizations, and then, of course, looked at some socioeconomic data, we evaluated tools, and then you really, got to the final report and planning board presentation, and now we're here today. Next slide. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to have some key pull quotes just to kind of contextualize some of the things that we found as key findings, both from data, quantitative, national-based data, as well as from qualitative interviews. This one really highlights how there's a disparity between micro businesses, those that might be 10 or fewer employees, and those that might be deemed small. If it's the federal government definition, right, it's 250 and lower. And so thinking really about what does that mean for access to resources and how that changes across the various different business sizes. It's important for us to really define what we talk about when we say diverse retailer. One is, they're independently owned, so they, are not franchised or not a national brand. They are minority serving and or owned. So one of the things that we were not able to fully articulate within the study is the ones that are all minority owned due to lack of data there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we looked at, what they were serving, looking at menu signage, the clientele, other visual representation through in-store visits and online, just to showcase, hey, is there a specific cuisine that they're offering or a specific culture that they're trying to attract based upon that messaging. Next. In those 3 neighborhoods, there's 279 diverse retailers. You see that is a pretty large share in each of the communities. Silver Spring being the lowest with 33%, but Tacoma Langley Crossroads being the greatest with 46%. Estimated jobs within that category is 1,391 and hundreds of $1 million of sales. So all of this is really just to understand why these businesses are so integral, is because they are employing many people, they are providing a good service, as well as they're a great part of the tax basis for retail property, etc. And so as we're thinking about, how do you support them long term, this is the population in which we're serving. And again, this is representative of 2020 when the study was conducted. Some of the benefits we also pulled out was, they're filling these specific retail service needs. They create a lot of jobs and economic opportunities, specifically for those immigrants who are coming in for the first time into the country, who have low language access, or are have their skills cannot be utilized just based upon how the local policy is structured. So it's hard to become a lawyer if you were a lawyer in your home country, and so retail is oftentimes that foray. Next is looking at closing the wealth gap. Those business owners are able to generate some revenue and being able to move that revenue into other opportunities for wealth generation. Also, it's very much so vitality and authenticity. So, walking into Tacoma Langley Crossroads or down Georgia Avenue, you really are able to see, the diversity of the county, and being able to recognize how, each of those clusters are able to, become a destination and really be a kind of staple within these business districts. So this one's really talking about, how changes really impact the customers. And so that's something that we really weren't able to solve for ourselves, but, because it's sometimes a housing challenge, just other macroeconomic things that are going on. And so really understanding kind of like this relationship between the customer and the business owner that the business owners are very well aware of. Thanks. And the challenges that really could put a lot of these businesses at risk are across 4 different categories in which we started to group them. So technical assistance and business networks, so really understanding access to capital, access to knowledge, access to human resources, whether that's employees or other are very essential. So understanding how do you help business owners get through some of those challenges through additional staff capacity, less burdensome application processes, et cetera. There are public policies and investments, and so really understanding, what denotes eligibility, how are existing businesses versus new businesses prioritize, what is other business costs that start to come up, thinking about things related to sustainability, delivery fees, et cetera, and how do they continue to support those things. Real estate, this is one of the key ones from our perspective, is many of the businesses we recognize were in diverse businesses were located in older properties. And so really understanding, what does that mean? And this other relationship to this prohibitive occupancy costs of new construction, the rent rates are too high. Capital and financing is one of those finals. And so really understanding, the finite funding and financing opportunities that exist. And so how do you really be able to get small businesses within those capital structures, create structures that work for them more directly, and then, start to continue to lower the cost of doing business if possible. So, a few different, people really talked about, this redevelopment and, how it's starting to displace people and how their property will be less competitive if, redevelopment occurs and some of this community is uprooted, and really thinking about, why some owners just choose to stay in their neighborhoods because their customers are nearby. And so, really not wanting to shift that customer base, even if redevelopment occurs. And so thinking about, how do you move that into a solution and strategy? So the conclusion of this study, we ended up with 4 different categories of opportunities to strengthen these diverse retail clusters, from coordination to capital, community, and controls. Coordination being, much more, staff support. How do you kind of provide additional resources as it relates to navigating many of these things? Capital, this is the financial capital, and figuring out how to aid them in getting through those processes. Community being, how do you celebrate? How do you bring the business and the retailer and regular business environment together? And controls, or from land use, and thinking about what does that mean as redevelopment may occur, and being proactive about those supports. Next slide. So in coordination, we recommended 3 different strategies. One is a diverse retail liaison. It's basically someone who can work with those diverse retailers to connect them to other resources. Having a legacy and minority business designation being another, really understanding what is the role of being able to find those businesses and being able to provide support to not only, these diverse retailers, but also those who have been in the county for an extended period of time, so that you can kind of navigate them as things are changing. And then a bill of rights or leasing support, for residential leases, that those things are largely regulated, while, commercial leases are not. And so thinking about the challenges that exist there in order to really support those businesses, who don't have this legal expertise. Commercial leases are not standardized, as well as they could, be very extensive. And so when you don't have the language skills or time or the network in order to review those things, what can be supported in lieu of, and how can the county, either provide some sense of bill of rights or, other services to really kind of support tenants as they're thinking about getting into commercial leases. This is something that's very innovative and haven't been actually done yet in the United States. There's some legislation that, there's going through in California right now that trying to, push that conversation a little bit forward, as well as in New York City. Capital, there's loan pools. So, really understanding how do you provide resources and incentives to help these businesses in improving, re-tenanting, purchasing their space, really to help root them and make sure that their businesses are able to attract existing and future residents. And then thinking about a monthly tax bill as a solution. Many businesses talk through, hey, how the end of year, annualized tax bill really creates a pressure point for them, and sometimes get them out of compliance. And so, other ramifications from that. And so how do you change that conversation to be something that, ebbs and flows as it relates to their specific monthly revenues, or be able to, have, a monthly flat rate based upon the previous year of assessment. In community, we talked about small business impact policy. There's a lot of talk about, what is the role of those who are constructing, like whether that's streetscape or the Purple Line or adjacent real estate, and how can we ensure that the connection between those entities who are doing the constructing and the small businesses and the small retailers are bolstered in order to make sure that they're able to circumvent any challenges related to loading and delivery, access to parking, all of these things at an early stage. So do it at a much more premature kind of component, and then thinking about placemaking. So what are the ways to amplify the public realm and really be able to root some of these cultures in the community. This is really done a lot across the nation as it relates to like Chinatowns and Little Tokyos and a lot of the Asian communities that manifest in Western cultures, that hasn't been done as much within, whether it's African or African American communities, as well as other kind of European communities that could also have some of those same cultural diversities be amplified. And what is that as a potential solution? Slide. And then controls, two things that we recommended was micro retail zoning. So really just understanding like, hey, can we be proponent of, smaller spaces? Because, the amount of space that tenants are leasing continues to decrease across the nation, which means that historically, many of the national brands were able to occupy some of the larger spaces, which naturally, provided opportunities for small businesses to, have some of those smaller spaces. But as that pressure continues to pinch, it becomes even more of a competition for those spaces. And we're going to talk a little bit about space as a way of affordability in a quick second, but also think about overlay zones, where how do we look at opportunities for tenants to support them while redevelopment is going on, and when that space is redeveloped. So how do you control form, limiting storefront widths, provide a diversity in space sizes to really meet businesses at all stages, whether they are, a small jewelry store that might need 250 square feet all the way through, supermarket or bigger box that may need up to upwards of 100,000 square feet. So what does that look like? How do you do those things in tandem in order to really be able to showcase opportunities for a very vibrant and diverse mix of retail opportunities? One of the things that we looked into as a part of this study was thinking about commercial exclusionary zoning. One of our key findings after some back of napkin, pro forma analyses was, if we were able to, we proceed with that and it provided affordable commercial space, that could have a pretty high loss, nearly $1 million, really understanding that could make the development infeasible. And, when you're comparing that to a housing context, you have LIHTC and other dollars that can be utilized to subsidize this. And so thinking about, what are opportunities to really think about subsidy in the future and bringing that into the conversation as we're thinking about affordability long-term. Next slide. And so one of the things that, we think about as it relates to affordability is, hey, if I'm a tenant that's looking for space, my broker is showing me a 2,500 square foot space and 1,000 square foot space. Yes, I might be paying more per square foot at the 1,000 square foot space. But when you start to look at, what does that look like from, what is the business actually paying year over year? It's much less, for that smaller space. And sometimes, that might take architectural intervention or something to be able to yield that outcome, but being able to really root those affordability standards within some of these opportunities for smaller spaces. One of the things that we put here is the broker commission, because brokers are incentivized financially to, have tenants that, are represented tenants that may be looking for larger spaces, may be able to pay more in rent. And so you end up with this natural disparity of support. And so figuring out what are opportunities to ensure that those tenants understand their ranges of options in cases of, misaligned representation from the brokerage community. Next. This really summarizes what we're recommending, the different kind of the top tools that we think should be proceeded with first. The legacy and minority business designation is highlighted because that's something that Purple Line Corridor Coalition has been working on very strategically over the last year or so, and we are very passionate about ensuring that these businesses are able to opt in. It's a low cost endeavor. We're able to start to measure and understand their needs in greater capacity countywide, not just within these communities, and then be able to design different policies, programs, and other supports, both intergovernmental, as well as through those business support organizations who might be working with them day in and day out. Next slide. This work with the Purple Line Corridor Coalition. I guess this wasn't the right presentation. So this work with the coalition. We are doing an equitable mixed use development initiative where we're looking at station along the buffer of a half mile around the stations to really understand, hey, where there's redevelopment potential as it relates to parcel size, as it relates to the value of those properties, as it relates to, how many businesses are there, and thinking about strategies to really support those businesses while also promoting some of the affordable housing or other mixed-use housing goals that, the county and the region has in order to, reach our housing benchmarks. And then we're also providing marketing and experience design support. The next slide, you'll see that, we go in and really look at, hey, how's the business currently function? How do we, provide some low cost, high impact design solutions for them? And so this is an example of LR Bowl, and that's in Long Branch community, and thinking about, strategies to really support them, and thinking about, how do you redo tabletops and provide, specific trash cans and, some baskets that's hanging on the wall, some paint, some very low cost millwork that can really start to amplify what they're already doing in the space. And so, all in all, this is a comprehensive strategy that we're not looking at, only what can we do from a policy perspective with the Purple Line Corridor Coalition, but also thinking about, how can we support those businesses as they're trying to attract and sustain new customers as, they're entering into the market with the Purple Line investment going on simultaneously. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm sure everybody has lots of questions, just like me. But we're going to hold in because we have two more speakers. Perhaps Mr. Angelini. Is he on? Angelini or Floor?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Oh, I see. Okay, finally we see you. Perhaps Mr. Angelini can go first.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Hope you had a nice weekend. So I guess we're here to talk about retail. I should say, well, our view, I'm one of the managing partner and one of the co-founders of LongPoint. And when we launched LongPoint back in 2015, what we really wanted to do was buy assets where a lot of stuff was going to be moving through it. And that led us to infill industrial warehouses and also grocery stores. I should say my dad was a food broker in Los Angeles, so I grew up in this business. And so we identified those two assets for lots of reasons. The first being that the supply chain that we currently have today is going to be completely it's going to be redone. We're in the process of it. And it's going to take, 20, 30, 40 years. And if you look at the history of supply chain restructuring, it's every 50 to 70 years, we go through a pretty significant change. One example I'll use real quick, I know you're talking about retail, but this is retail. Those containers you see everywhere in the ports, they're not that old. A lot of people, when I ask them, how old do you think they are? They say 100 years and so on, turn of the century. But the reality is the first one, the main voyage was in 1958 from Newark, New Jersey to Houston. And that was 2 years after Dwight Eisenhower signed the infrastructure bill. So everything that we see today is 70 years old, and it's going to change dramatically. Why is this relevant to retail? I should say that, look, I'm not the biggest fan of retail in general. We don't do malls. We don't do Main Street or High Street or any kind of street. What we focus on is grocery anchored shopping centers in very specific neighborhoods, and we try to give them what they need. And so our view was, the big conversation was e-commerce. So, can you be e-commerce resilient and all this kind of stuff? Our view was that was the wrong question because you have to be complementary to e-commerce. And now it's, omni-channel, multi-channel, all these different things that you hear about. I think were very relevant today, but really, 5, 7, 10 years ago. The retail sector, and in particular the grocery sector, is really strong. And the reason is it's kind of gone through what the office sector is about to go through. The owners of these assets have changed and adapted and ultimately have created places that people want to go to. And so this idea that we're just going to stay at home and order stuff and never leave the house, it's crazy. It's just not the human experience. We're going to go outside. We're going to interact with people. So the question is, where do they do that? And like I said, we focused on grocery anchored shopping centers, and we do two things. One is we believe that the grocery store is the best fulfillment warehouse in any neighborhood. The one thing that's has a cap on rental rates for industrial is the use and the restructuring of the grocery store into a logistics node. The pandemic actually paused that, but you're going to see that kind of kick up pretty soon as we move forward in terms of those changes. The second thing is the grocery stores where we all go. We start with food, and it is the kind of thing that's hard to deliver to the house. It's challenging. It's from lots, whether it's milk or frozen foods or fruit. It's difficult to deliver it in time, and so the logistics aren't great. And if you look at the whole cold chain, it's kind of a disaster at the moment, but that's going to take time. And so that was one main reason, is the logistics conversation. We spent a lot of time on that. I know I have only a few minutes. And the second piece is the grocery store is going to go through a dramatic change. And that is, we see it in our politics, you see it all over the place, but the demographics of this country are changing dramatically. Whether people like it or not, to me, it doesn't really matter. What matters is they're changing. And so I'm from Argentina. Hispanics shop differently than your typical traditional American, who shop differently from Asians. And then from there, within the Hispanic community, you have many different types. There's Cuban, Mexican, Argentinian, Brazilian, and so on and so on and so forth. So the job of the owner of these grocery anchored shopping centers is to curate these assets so that they provide a culturally relevant experience with the proper merchandising mix. The Hispanic purchasing power has basically doubled since 2010. And I think I think it's 2.1, it should be 3.4 or something like that, in 2030. Our view is, how do you capture this change? And we're doing it by owning grocery anchored shopping centers. We continue to buy during this period of time of uncertainty. There's not a lot of clarity. The debt costs are really expensive. But we've been buying, we've been very active in the grocery sector, and we'll continue to do so. I'll pause there and take questions. I know that I'm very high level, but
this was great. Thank you so much, Mr. Angelini. We
Yeah.
appreciate your openness and your straightforward thinking and sharing your experience. Next, we're going to have Mr. Stephen Floor. Is he on?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Stephen Floor. I'm the Senior Vice President of Development for Westfield. I oversee projects on the eastern half of the United States with a major focus in the DC Metro, specifically for Westfield's Wheaton and Montgomery project in New York City Metro, in northern New Jersey at Garden State Plaza, and then Chicago Metro, or Shore Chicago, Skokie, the Old Orchard. I name all three projects because all are similar and all affect lens of my discussion today a little bit in terms of transformation of retail. I've been with Westfield for 23 years. I've been all over the geography of the United States with them, East Coast and West Coast and in between. And one truism about retail that kind of flows through all the presentations I've seen today is that retail adapts or moves on, one of the two. And that's not something that's going to change in the marketplace. And whether that entrepreneur is a sole operator in a small shop in Wheaton, or whether it's the chief merchandising officer for Zara or Tiffany, the approach is still the same, which is understand your customer, understand where your customer is coming from, and serve their need. And that changes over time, and the best retailers adapt to that change. In recent years, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about the death of the mall, and I can certainly probably speak best through my lens as it pertains to super regional malls, since that's my decades of experience with. And the reality is very different. The discussion about omni-channel, and I'll just use that word, as Mr. Angelini said, there's a lot of words that go toward that have been bantered around over the years, but that's a good one. And while we did see a decline in retail as patterns began to shift, and of course COVID amplified with staying at home, with online ordering only, the reality is true. Humans are a very personable species. Everybody wants to be out, everyone wants to touch and feel, everyone wants to have an experience. Those retailers that have figured out how to combine the online expertise, which a lot of them went through that fire during COVID to figure that piece out, and marry that up with their bricks and mortar location, are the ones that genuinely have done the best. We've seen a number of digitally native brands, for instance, come and open up brick and mortar locations, and we're seeing that almost across the board from digitally native brands, because they've realized there is a halo effect that for every store that they open in a geography where they've never had a store, they actually more than double their sales in that geography, because it's serving the need of the physical customer that still wants to come in, touch the product, feel it, try it on, return it, frankly. And then in that return, the retailer goes old school, which goes back thousands of years, which is you return something, they don't want to let you leave the shop until you buy something else. And a lot of people, from a mentality perspective, take a return as a coupon, and they end up upselling the customer on their exit. The placemaking piece, and I know I've got a brief window here, the placemaking piece is critical, whether that's in the mall environment, whether it's in the street environment. Changing from a more traditional retail perspective of, hey, I'm a retailer, come shop my goods, to a more bespoke focus on, I'm a retailer, but I'm serving you in these different ways. And by the way, you're going to have a certain experience when you come into my shop. And again, that experience is going to be very defined by the customer they're serving, or it needs to be defined by the customer, as well as by the retailer itself. And then finally, this concept of the mixed use piece, which obviously we're very focused on in the Westfield environment, with the entitlements in place at Montgomery, of adding density that is beyond just pure retail. We certainly believe that our retail cores are as big as they need to be. If you take Montgomery, for instance, call it 1.4 million square feet of retail. Arguably, it could probably be a little smaller, probably 1.1, 1.2 to kind of right-sized retail offer. And then we add in the additional uses, be that residential, medical office building, fitness, something obviously we haven't even thought of yet as times continue to evolve. But the focus is on bringing complementary uses to the site that create an ecosystem that, at least for our communities that we're building, that when you're there, you don't have to leave again. For us, that means we have to adapt, and we need to bring in services that deal with smaller local entrepreneurs that provide those everyday services that you don't necessarily get in the mall environment. and that becomes very critical. We have very specific needs on our properties, probably not for discussion today, that probably differ a bit from the street retail that's being discussed at a lot of locations. In order to keep our sites vibrant, as I said, we have plenty of retail to continue to reinvent within that space to create that phenomenal daily amenity for everybody that chooses to live and work at the better sites. That's where we're going with the assets. Again, there's a lot broad range of topics I'm happy to get into, and maybe best be served with questions and answers.
Great. Thank you so much for your comments, Mr. Floor. And because I have no shame, let me just remind you that Westfield Wheaton must have redevelopment soon, making it walkable and bikeable so you get next to the entire community. So I'm going to follow up on you on that one.
And I'm happy to come down and meet with you about that too. I know you've had a number of discussions.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to open it up to questions for the committee, and I only have a few things to say before we do that. I was recently in California. I was in San Francisco during the summer, and I saw the legacy business registry that they have. Great model, and goes along the sides of the presentation that we just went through on the legacy business idea for different places in the county, especially the Long Branch, Tacoma Park, Wheaton neighborhoods. So I look forward to hearing more about that in the future. There's one question that I have, and it was mostly based on comments that I have heard in different spaces, being, civic association meetings, or even the chamber, like different business chambers across the county. This idea that there's some property owners who prefer to have an empty space, a retail space, than renting to a business. So if anybody can comment on that. I mean, the comment that I have heard from people, and again, it's a comment, I have no idea what the answer is that the property owner can take a tax break if the space is empty versus actually, leasing the property to somebody. Because at the end of the day, we all want to have places that are active, that are occupied. It makes our community, vibrant. And I'm thinking of places in Wheaton, downtown Silver Spring, and Burtonsville. I mean, you name it. Across the county, you can find places where we have, shopping centers that are completely empty. So if anybody can speak on that, that will be great. And then I'll end there because I know there are quite a few questions.
Steven, I feel like you're the best suited for this answer.
Yeah.
You can take a shot at it. Again, my lens is very mall focused, and there's a couple comments that do come to mind about why someone would keep a space empty. In the context of mixed use approvals, we often see a requirement for a certain ratio of retail to residential. Depending on the location, that's a tough sell. While the code gets applied evenly across the board, I firmly believe that there has to be an understanding of each individual mixed-use property that's coming in from an application, and whether the quantity of retail being required is actually the right quantity for that location. Because what it does is it does saddle the landlord with an issue that they may have to pay a lot of capital to build out the space, provide some tenant incentives for the tenant to come in, and frankly, that may be decretive to their project at the end of the day, and it literally is cheaper for their pro forma for them to keep that space empty in the long term. Now, that doesn't necessarily address, I suspect, some of what you've seen, however, which a little bit more difficult insight on the tax piece, because that's just not relevant to us in the whole environment. We pay plenty of taxes, but we don't benefit from a whole bunch of different breaks. So.
Thank you for that answer. And I also want to take the opportunity to mention to Mr. Angelini that I loved your comments about, stating that retails adapt, especially with the cultural changes, demographic changes that we are seeing across the United States. I find it so true in my community. So thank you for highlighting that. With that, I'm going to pass it to Councilmember Balkin.
Thank you. This was really an excellent panel and great overview. And I'm actually optimistic after hearing what we heard today. So thank you all. I've got a ton of questions. I'll try to be brief. I think from the perspective of placemaking experience, of course, that's critical. And I think that the issue of having different sizes and having different opportunities, different lease lengths, really helps in trying to bring in different types of people. And then a couple of questions on the presentation. I saw, this is in the weeds, sorry, the issue of the amount of development, retail development, this is Mr. Ali, about looking at the past 10 years compared to prior 10 years. It's on Circle 11. And it looks like there's significant difference. Is that just because we're not quite done with the 10-year mark? Or is there a significant difference in the amount of retail space being developed right now?
There is definitely a significant difference. Part of it is that retail rents alone don't really underwrite pure retail development, which is why a lot of retail is coming as part of mixed-use development, and development itself has been challenged because of high construction costs and a difficult financing environment, and so we don't have a lot of new development in general, which also helps to explain some of that as well. So, the type of retail is shrinking, so the amount of new retail will be smaller. It will be, like I said, part of that mixed-use format. And actually, some of the data doesn't really capture some of the deliveries that are happening as part of multifamily developments, where the retail portion is relatively small, still part of the retail inventory, but it's not necessarily a traditional retail center. And so that's also eating into the inventory a little bit.
And I think that relates somewhat to the slide about commercial and retail, and that retail often follows the commercial buildings. And if we're seeing a change in that, while I'm optimistic, I'm a little bit concerned about, is there a lag effect? We recently had the presentation on commercial space. So are we looking at the possibility of a downturn in retail?
Not necessarily. I think the retail follows rooftop, so it does follow also where mixed use and new office development will go. Certainly the Pike and Rose is a great example of a place that has low office vacancy rates, in part because retail is an amenity supporting it. But in general, it's really the residential development and the additional spending that provides that leads to new retail development.
Great.
In general.
Thank you. And then thank you, Mr. Boone. I thought your comments were really spot on. I think the minority liaison is important. I think that if we look at the Business Resource Center provided in the executive branch, I think is a good example of that. And I'm assuming that we do that. And I always want to lift up that resource. I really resonated the legacy and minority business designation. I think that's really important, particularly in redevelopment areas. We really don't want it. We have such interesting and a wonderfully diverse retail spaces in some areas of the county, and we want to make sure that as we improve those areas with whether it's transit or mixed use, that we don't lose those areas. So that really resonated with me, as does the leasing support. I think that that's a great idea to have a toolbox of how a retailer can get started. We have those types of websites and various resources for entrepreneurs to get started. I think specifically for a retailer, and support on leasing I think is really important. So that resonated with me. We didn't talk much about pop-ups, incubators, co-op space. And so I don't know, Mr. Boone, if you've looked at that, or maybe Mr. Fleur in the mall space. Is there room for the pop-up incubator model, and how can we support that?
Yeah, I will comment on the study. So we were looking at existing brick and mortar tenants, not necessarily how do you incubate new businesses. So that the study didn't address that subject specifically. But in our experience, yes, that's a common occurrence and understanding of how do you support them. I think as we're getting down to the operationalizing of it, it's like what's the entity that is offering the pop-ups and managing that, because it's not like a traditional lease that might be 5 years and one touch point from a commercial broker, but somebody that have to come in once a month or a weekend or or a series of months. So that requires a different type of support than most commercial real estate entities are structured to provide. And so really thinking about who are those organizations that you will partner with, those the real estate developer or landlord long term in order to ensure those things are successful. Organizations such as malls sometimes have that support in-house, right? And so hey, we have somebody who's managing that program. It might be the asset manager, it might be others who are on that payroll. And so as we're thinking about the viability of pop-ups and incubators and other small business supports as they're growing and starting up, it's really the wraparound, making sure that is successful and a financially viable thing for the property owner.
Thank you.
Yeah, to speak to the mall environment, certainly in Westfield, we actually have a long history of pop-up and incubator tech programs that are in place. Some people may not think about it in terms of how we present it, but there are a variety of levels that we approach it. One is just the common area program that you see. If you see somebody on a cart, oftentimes they're not all local, but we do have a number of locals that try their hands at retail in an environment that they can commit to as little as a month, come on forward and see if the product works. In the last couple of years, coming out of COVID, we did institute a different program at our centers as well that we have. It's a much more incubator type approach that we provide a white box space, and we do provide some of that in-house expertise on helping the local tenant figure out how to merchandise, where to get their casing from, how to best present, really taking our internal knowledge that we have from seeing all of the best-in-class retailers setting up and helping them apply it to that space. And again, we do these leases on short-term basis. We typically provide marketing support for them. In some instances, we actually provide investment opportunities as well, where we as an organization will actually invest in their business to provide them seed money as well.
Yeah, that's great.
It works both ways. Works for them locally. Obviously, if we can find the next best retailer, it's somebody that we can actually help them expand their business across our country.
Great, thank you. And just one technical question. I think this was in Mr. Boone's presentation. The top 4 sectors in retail, you listed grocery stores. Is that the number of leases or the square footage of leasing?
Great question. It's the number.
Okay, so I would assume that the square footage of leasing, grocery stores have a much larger footprint there, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thanks.
Great, and I appreciate Councilwoman Balkan uplifting the business center. And a reminder for folks that before you sign a lease, check out the business center because they'll work with you on the leasing terms that they're giving you. Please do not sign a lease before talking to us. And then also, DPS, Department of Permitting Services, is coming in front of this committee in December. And one of the things that they're going to be sharing, and if this is a reminder to them, is that they're working on a guide for retails and for businesses, especially also restaurants, to go through. It's like a checklist of things they need to do before, they move in or they find a place where they can start their businesses. So that's also important to highlight. So stay tuned for more in December. With that, I'm going to pass it to our Council President, Evan Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody, for the really informative conversation. I too, have a number of questions that I think will help elevate the discussion. And Mr. Ali, thank you for your thorough report. A question that continues to be asked, most recently last week in the Audit Committee, is about businesses and the number of businesses that we have in Montgomery County. And that was in the context of the bag fee. And I've had many other conversations, as we all have, about having one concise list of all businesses. I'm just curious, in your analysis, how did you come up with the number of retail businesses in the county?
Yeah, so this is actually based on QCW data, which is based on private establishments that were classified as retail by their NAICS code. So we actually haven't identified the businesses themselves, just the businesses that are classified to be a certain type of retail establishment. And so we calculated the total number of people that are employed in the range of retail that includes, auto dealerships through food and drinking establishments as well. So it's not based on a business inventory.
Got it. And then in your analysis also, there were approximately 300 businesses that were listed as having no employees. Can you lift the veil on that explanation?
I'd probably have to investigate a little more to lift the veil, but it's, again, it's just sort of businesses that might be listed that way. Maybe it's the owner has a business listed, but they don't actually employ anyone directly.
Sure.
But we'd have to.
Didn't know if you had any additional information.
If I may chime in for a minute about the data, we actually, and this is Carrie McCarthy, Division Chief for Research and Strategic Projects, we actually do have the QCW micro data, and that lets us, when we do small area plans, identify the businesses, but we have a very strict license with the Maryland Department of Labor, so we can't give out specific information about businesses and employment size.
Great. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Arley, for that. Mr. Boone, appreciated your high-level analysis of the retail sector. I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you consider, or what does the industry, from your perspective, consider success in the retail sector, or successful retail?
That's it's a very complicated question. I think what I would define success is when supply matches demand, right? So you don't have excess of space that either is remaining vacant or have low productivity in terms of sales ratios. Or conversely, thinking about it from a factor of, can a community get the goods and services it needs, just on a very elemental level. So it's like, hey, do I have a barbershop in my neighborhood that I can go to? Is there somewhere I could buy a T-shirt if it's an emergency type of thing? And recognizing that there's different distances that you'll travel for each of those goods, but making sure that some of these things are proximate to your location, your home, your office, as well as convenient. Thinking about time that the stores are open, what's the environment that they're providing, and then finally that they're meeting this ratio of like price quality. That oftentimes customers have to trade off often, when it relates to their respective household budgets, et cetera. So I think it's a very dynamic system that would denote success in my eyes, and wanting to ensure that there's a lot of variability for that community by community.
Yeah, I agree with your response, and while it was a very simple, short question, it was a very complex response necessary, because I think at the heart of this conversation is making sure that our residents have the goods and services that they need to be happy and fulfilled. And as we live in one of the most diverse communities in the entire country, it takes a lot of different retail and services to make everybody feel whole and welcome, and provide them with the intangible benefits of having those shops and stores down the block. And so your presentation about making sure that we have the small minority businesses, and that the Purple Line, the PLCC of which I'm an ex officio member, are working to make sure that that corridor, as it continues to grow and evolve, maintain some semblance of what it is now in regarding the diversity and the diverse residents that live along that corridor. And it takes work. And thankfully, we have provided programs here in the county and grant opportunities here in the county, but we can always be doing more. And to the point that the chair noted just a few moments ago, it's all about informing people about the services we provide. And if we don't have a particular service, we should have a conversation about meeting those needs. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with you and seeing the data over the coming months and years, recognizing that it's getting harder and harder to be a retailer, and being a small retailer, a niche retailer, and we got to keep our eye on that one, especially as we are one of the most diverse places in this country. So thank you for that. And the last question I have, going from small retailers to big retailers, Mr. Floor, most of Westfield's tenants are national. Some you could even say are international. And I know so much emphasis is put on anchor tenants. And as someone who most recently was at Wheaton Westfield, but also a few weeks ago was at Montgomery, what is the state of those properties? How are they doing fair compared to other malls in your portfolio or in the businesses, and compared to others outside?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the question. The Wheaton and Montgomery are on two different tracks, but both headed in the same direction. Maybe is the first thing to set out. Montgomery is seen in the retail industry as a flagship retail location. We've seen across the United States in all locations a flight of some of this more national retail, honestly, from some street locations to these flagship destinations, or from a failing mall environment to a robust mall. There's no doubt that there's probably a third too many malls in the United States. So there are some dead mall discussions out there. Montgomery's not a dead mall discussion, neither is we, but for two different reasons. Obviously, you've seen our entitlement plans, the site plan for Montgomery, which adds density to the site. One of those relics from the past, being the Sears box, for instance. I mean, we do see these as opportunities, as we always have in the past, but instead of bolstering them with more retail in those locations, we want to add density in those locations that, at the ground level, still have street retail and are still a very robust retail, food and beverage, entertainment type environment. We're very manic about the placemaking, and we always have been, and we want to expand that as we begin to turn centers like Montgomery a little bit inside out, that we have a very solid retail core, but the typical retail mall of the 60s that was built as a fortress, all inward facing, sees a parking lot around it, those need to connect all the way out to the street grid. And you don't want to do that with building an enclosed mall all the way out to the street if you can help it. Ideally, what you want to do is start adding in a street grid onto the property that more naturally connects to the surrounding community. So as we build more on our sites, which bolsters the retail environment to keep that strong, it also invites the greater community, not just from a car perspective, but from a walking perspective. Personally, if somebody is like Folger Pratt's building apartments right across the street from us right now, as a matter of fact, phenomenal. How do I ensure that customer, that retailer, the person that's calling that place home, is going to comfortably walk across the street, traverse our site, and become part of the overall experience? Wheaton's on a little bit different track because of the type of retail that's there. You could argue that Wheaton is already a mixed-use environment with the kind of retail that we have at the site, with the proximity to the Red Line Metro. Our focus there is similar from a master planning perspective in terms of adding density. It has to be much more integrated, though, in terms of with what WMATA's doing, with what the county wants to do. We're certainly aware of the planning department's look at the surrounding community, which we're very supportive of, because we do think that will help bolster Wheaton as an investable site. One comment I didn't make earlier, and one thing I would encourage the county to look at when you're analyzing, hey, how much control do we want to have over types of retail and types of retail sizes, is I would simply encourage conversations with the capital markets community. Because at the end of the day, any new mixed-use project has to be financeable, and it's financeable through the capital markets. So if someone like a PGIM or Nuveen or M&G or Peru United States, any of those, they have a view on what's financeable and what's not. If local regulations diverge significantly from what they feel is financeable, developers can't get money and they can't build it. So there's a balancing act that generally has to occur in there. Developers, you will find, I am one, are often wanting to provide everything for everybody, but we do have constraints. We need to go borrow money like anybody else, and we have to prove our project's finance. So I'm sorry, that was a little off track, but I failed to mention that earlier.
No, very helpful. And, to hear that both Montgomery and Wheaton are both doing well, and that you have slightly different ideas for each of them is good for everybody to know. And I'll close by saying the very first vote I took here on the council 5 or 6 years ago was the ZTA to support the greater density at Westfield. Westfield, Montgomery. And so I've seen the progress, look forward to seeing more. It's the type of development that we need, and appreciate all of you for your presentation today.
I must say that you probably don't remember this, but I was on the planning board when Westfield Montgomery came in front of us, and I voted on that density, and I said, it's awesome, but you must do the same thing in Wheaton soon. So now I'm the council member of the Wheaton area, so stay tuned, my friend.
I remember that clearly. You had Mr. Leotta.
Glad you haven't forgotten. Last question on this panel. We have 2 other panels after this. It's going to be council member Lorian Sales.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for the very thorough presentations about our retail environment. Given the increasing shift to online retail, you shared recommendations for how the industry is repurposing old and new storefronts. And I recall the City of Gaithersburg's facade improvement fund. I know the county also has a facade improvement. We just looked at a facade improvement, I believe, in East County. Just wondering what the associated costs would be, and what we're seeing is as far as improvements to the facade improvement projects that we've successfully undertaken. And is this a temporary trend or long-term response to the changes?
Carrie McCarthy for the record. The facade improvements actually run by the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. So I'm sure council staff can certainly follow up with them for funding. It probably varies based on the size of the project.
Okay.
Yeah, we do not have representatives from that department to speak, but I don't know if any of our experts here want to talk about how changing facades, appearance, size, structure, how that could strengthen the retail market.
Yes,
so
increase longevity, support the placemaking, and increase walkability.
So I'll turn it over if any of our panelists want to try answering that one.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So the facade improvement programs, are offered by many jurisdictions across the United States, and I think they're really targeted at the individual kind of independent owners, so like mom and pop that may not be institutional, right? Really just because when you're in like a Main Street environment, you have series of different owners who, oftentimes just rely on the revenue from that specific business in order to reinvest into that property. And so the investment typologies that are being made, sometimes require to end up in a lot of deferred maintenance of these properties because, hey, we can't charge higher rent rates because the tenant can't afford it, or this property has been vacant for so long, and so we want to reinvest in this space. And so I think in those conditions is when you're most likely to see a facade improvement program, and they are structured as facade improvement programs because it's investing into the building, and the building is kind of staying there, and not necessarily. There are very few programs that actually invest into the either interiors, or the furniture, fixtures, equipment, because those things are not associated with that kind of depreciation schedule that really allows for the increase of the asset value for taxing purposes. So it's like a virtuous cycle that continues to happen with this relationship of the property investment and the actual tax base that is made by. And so most of those facade improvement programs are funded by community development block grants, which are sometimes structured as reimbursements. One of the things that I recommend to most of the clients that I support is just ensuring that when those things are structured, that we consider opportunities for the landlord and the tenant to apply, and ensure that they are in a mutually beneficial relationship. If it's solely the tenant and they're responsible for that improvement, if they don't have a strong lease, they could kind of lose that investment that they're making in tandem with the local government. So being able to think about that way. But overall, when you're talking about the impact that it has, it's really looking at hey, how do we continue to articulate what this district is? How can we make sure those businesses are successful through experience design interventions, and so that when you're walking by, you understand its brand, what they're selling. The storefront windows are hopefully not cracked, and you can see inside of them. So all of the small kind of nuances that really resonate with customers as they are patronizing an environment.
Yeah, seeing that this was one of the strategies and recommendations, it may be a good idea to have DHCA come and tell us about their 10-year, or it's a 5-year plan and $3.5 million budget. Glad we have the chair from Planning, Housing, and Parks here. He may be able to weigh in. Speaking about the shift to online retail, particularly with our malls. Westfield, we know, is doing really well, as is Montgomery Mall. We're in the process of redeveloping Lake Forest Mall of County. What have we explicitly learned from the malls that are thriving? And are there any studies with the longevity of these sorts of spaces? I know we talked about infill development, marketing. I don't know who wants to.
You're looking for specific examples of why one mall is successful and other is not.
Yes.
I mean, broadly speaking, it's a good question. If we can answer it all brilliant. But there is an element that we've seen as a common thread, which centers around reinvestment, certainly, with the ownership investing not only in creating these great spaces for people to come, because ultimately in a mall environment, it's the landlord's job to create a common area space that's really compelling for people to feel safe, be comfortable, and want to spend a lot of time. And then it's also the landlord's job to fill their spaces with the best-in-class retailers that are going to keep people on site for as long as possible. So there are multiple layers of investment. Investment has absolutely been pinched over the years. There's certainly been a consolidation in the major landlords when it comes to the big regional malls over the decades. When I started, honestly, there were probably like 10 major mall companies out there. We're getting down to a handful of us now. And that consolidation hasn't helped from an investment perspective, where the leadership at our companies do have to pick and choose based on demographic trends, based on sales, frankly, that are already being generated. And those have generally benefited over time and have had the most investment, stayed at the top of the pack. COVID winnowed the group even further. It really accelerated a trend that was already in place. again, I commented on, there is an over-retailing per capita in the United States, hands down. We have more retail per capita than anywhere in the world. And the amount of malls naturally actually needs to be reduced. Mall land generally is great land, though. As I've talked to some other municipalities where it's been more of a dead mall discussion, in some of our secondary and tertiary markets where we have shut our malls, those are great pieces of dirt to be redeveloped for something else. And that's what I always encourage municipalities to think about, is that if you have a mall that has died, you shouldn't try to replace it with another mall. It's not to say that you don't want to replace it with some great elements that make it a place, which inevitably is going to be some retail, some food and beverage, some entertainment, grocery, those things that make a walkable community. But recreating the past, we've seen is nigh on impossible in this business at this point, because the quantity of deals getting done to fill a regional mall are down over the years. There's simply less deals to be had in the marketplace.
All right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
That
I always talk about it. It's a broad topic.
No, that's very helpful. My last question was just about the, I believe it was 6 recommendations on Circle 32. I think they're all great recommendations. That was on the Retail and Diverse Communities study. I totally agree with the recommendations and just hope we can get a cost estimate to implement each strategy. It's great to have good ideas, but actually implementing them and executing them and understanding the fiscal impact of those strategies would be really helpful. And I may have missed this, but I don't know if there was a RESJ review for.
No, we don't do RSJ reviews on studies. It's usually either a bill or a supplemental appropriation.
Because there's a few strategies, if we're doing a fiscal impact, it would be good to see.
Yes, if we follow through either with funding or legislation, that's when the review is triggered.
Perfect. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you so much. What a great panel. Honestly, we're honored to have you all. Thank you for your time, Mr. Angelini, Mr. Boo, Mr. Flower. I will follow up with everyone, and because it's already 10:53, we're gonna ask the second panel to please come in. It's gonna be the OLO 2023 evaluation of the Bethesda Urban Partnership, Inc. If folks can please come to the table. And we have representatives of the executive branch and also the Bethesda Urban Partnership. And with us today, we have the district council member for the area, Vice President Fritzen. Mr. Fusselman, would you like to start, or?
I'd be happy to. Good morning, council members. For the record, Peter Fosselman, and Director of Regional Services located in Bethesda. And with me today, of course, is Jeff Burton, who's the Executive Director of the Bethesda Urban Partnership. Jeff will be going over some information for you, as well as I'm sure our analyst is with us today will be as well. But I have a couple of comments. One is just to applaud the staff at the Bethesda Urban Partnership. We have developed an amazing relationship with Jeff and his great team. A few of them are here in the audience as well. And we continue to foster that relationship, and we're working on some new projects for Bethesda. And we are also taking some of the knowledge that's been learned to help with future urban districts, or I call them urban district lights, that may come up around the county in various areas. So again, thank you for the opportunity. I'm here to answer questions throughout the presentation, but otherwise I'll be very quiet.
Good morning, everyone. Jeff Burton, Executive Director of the Bethesda Urban Partnership. Thank you for having us here. I'm going to be brief also. I'm going to let Chitra do most of the talking since this is her presentation. The thing that I kind of want to reiterate is I've been a part of this reevaluation process for 5 cycles now, and this is by far the most professionally done, inclusive, high quality one. So I applaud Chitra and OLO for doing that, and we really appreciate your work and look forward to hearing from the council. And with me today is Marion Block, who's the chair of our board of directors.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Chitra Kalyandrik, and I'm here to discuss OLO's evaluation of the Bethesda Urban Partnership, or BUP. Before I begin, I would like to take a moment and thank all the staff at BUP, as well as in the executive branch, as well as representatives from BUP's community partners who assisted with this report. We received a very high level of cooperation from all parties. So this presentation gives a brief overview of OLO's report. First, I will provide background information on BUP, the goals of this evaluation, and the methodology used to complete it. Next, I will describe what BUP's mandated responsibilities are and how BUP fulfilled these responsibilities during the study period. I'll then provide a brief overview of BUP's finances and review feedback gathered from BUP's county and community partners about their services. And finally, I will review OLO's recommendations for council action. The council established BUP in 1993 as the Urban District Corporation to serve as the management entity for the Bethesda Urban District. Bethesda is the only urban district in the county managed by an urban district corporation. In Silver Spring and Wheaton, services are delivered directly by county government staff. According to county law, an urban district corporation exists for 5 years before the council must reauthorize it. BUP is about to complete its 6th 5-year term, which ends on January 31st, 2024. And by law, OLO must conduct a performance evaluation of BUP before it is reauthorized. OLO's evaluation had 3 goals. First, to assess BUP's performance in fulfilling its responsibilities, to examine BUP's finances as well as how the county funds the services that BUP provides, and to gather feedback on BUP's performance from executive branch staff and others who regularly work with BUP or who benefit from its services. To do this, OLO reviewed organizational, financial, and budget documents from 2019 through 2023 and conducted interviews with BUP and county staff as well as community representatives. OLO's evaluation found that BUP continues to fulfill its mandated responsibilities as defined in county law, in its governing documents, and in its contracts with the county. The table on this slide and on the next slide gives examples of services that BUP provides as part of its major responsibilities, though it's not a full list of the services that BUP provides. The first responsibility is to maintain and enhance streetscape amenities. BUP does this through comprehensive maintenance and landscaping services in public rights-of-way, in public garages, and for optional method development properties with public amenities. The second is to promote and organize cultural, recreational, and business activities. BUP does this through marketing for local businesses and cultural activities, as well as organizing public events like Taste of Bethesda and the Bethesda Film Festival. The third responsibility is to advance a sense of community in downtown Bethesda. One of the ways BUP does this is by deploying Ask Me team members on the ground in downtown Bethesda to answer questions and provide information to visitors. The fourth responsibility is to enhance safety and security in the urban district. OLO found that BUP works closely with county police, fire and rescue services, and the Department of Transportation to address safety issues as they arise, such as road closures or helping to clear debris from streets. BUP also regularly meets with the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce and other community partners to proactively discuss community safety. The fifth responsibility is to provide transportation services via the Bethesda Circulator, a free shuttle service in downtown Bethesda. BUP manages a third-party contractor who operates the shuttle, but BUP staff provides marketing services and maintains circulator infrastructure like bus stop benches. OLO found that BUP has significantly increased circulator ridership since the service began in 2006. The final responsibility relates to BUP's role as the manager of the Bethesda Transportation Management District. OLO found that BUP promotes alternate modes of transportation, or modes other than single occupancy vehicles, to employers, employees, and to residents in Bethesda through outreach events. OLO found that health restrictions during the pandemic led to fewer people using BUP's services and attending its programs between FY20 and FY22. This slide provides examples of how BUP adapted its activities in response. For example, BUP placed its circulator service on a limited schedule due to low ridership and reductions in county funding. It also moved many of its in-person events online, such as the local Writers Showcase and creating a Bethesda Fine Arts Festival Facebook gallery. Of note, circulator service and many of BUP's in-person events have returned to normal operations. BUP also initiated new activities during the pandemic in response to emerging community needs, like the Bethesda Streetery. In June of 2020, BUP partnered with the Department of Transportation to open 2 streetery locations to create more outdoor seating for people to gather safely and to patronize businesses. The initiative became very popular with restaurants, residents, and visitors, and BUP has now made the Norfolk Avenue Streetery permanent and will expand it to more blocks along Norfolk Avenue. OLO also reviewed BUP's strategic plan for 2019 through 2024. OLO found that BUP's actions since 2019 show that it met its strategic goals and adapted its services to meet community needs, particularly during the pandemic. BUP's strategic plan identified 4 core areas: the Bethesda brand, beautification, arts and entertainment, and mobility. A few examples of BUP's actions in those core areas include redesigning the BUP brand for the first time in the organization's history, installing 4 public murals throughout the district, organizing public art events that drew tens of thousands of people to downtown Bethesda, and advocating for bike lanes and more bike racks in the district. BUP completed its 2024 through 2029 strategic plan this year, and a copy of that plan is included in OLO's full report. OLO also reviewed BUP's finances for the past 5 years. In FY23, BUP's revenues were $5.4 million, which is a 3% decrease from FY19. Its expenditures were $5.2 million in FY23, which is a 3% increase from FY19. Most of BUP's income, 94%, comes from 5 agreements and contracts that it holds with the county. And I will talk a little bit more about county funding sources in a bit. BUP's non-county revenue comes from events and sponsorships, Bethesda Circulator advertising, and service contracts that it holds with other entities. And BUP uses this revenue to enhance its services and to fund a reserve for capital equipment and for operations. The majority of BUP's county revenue comes from its agreement to manage the Bethesda Urban District, which was $4.1 million in FY23, and that includes funds to manage the Bethesda Circulator. This agreement is administered by the Bethesda Chevy Chase Regional Services Center and is funded by the Bethesda Urban District. The Urban District receives funding from transfers from the Bethesda Parking Lot District, an urban district tax, and charges paid by optional method developers for maintaining public amenities for that development. OLO found that the largest source of revenue for the Bethesda Urban District are transfers from the Bethesda Parking Lot District. In FY23, 65% of the Urban District's revenue came from the Bethesda PLD, transfers from the Bethesda PLD. Urban districts may also receive general fund transfers to support services that the county would have otherwise provided to the area without the urban district. In FY19, 20, 20, and 21, the council approved transfers from the county's general fund to the Bethesda Urban District, but zeroed out that transfer from the general fund in FY22 and FY23. I will note that the council has approved a general fund transfer of approximately $433,000 to the urban district for FY24, which was less than the county executive's budget request. OLO also solicited feedback on BUP's performance from the county departments who administer contracts with BUP and county and community partners who work closely with BUP to provide services in the urban district. OLO found that BUP's partners continue to be satisfied with the quality of BUP's work. County representatives reported that BUP is an effective collaborator and that BUP brings a high level of commitment and expertise to managing the urban district. Community partners expressed appreciation for BUP's role as a liaison between businesses, residents, and county government. OLO also reviewed feedback from residents, business owners, developers, and other stakeholders that was gathered during BUP's latest strategic planning process. And overall, community members were pleased with BUP and felt that the organization was important for the continued success of downtown Bethesda. So overall, OLO's evaluation found that BUP continues to fulfill its mandated responsibilities at a high level, and that its partners in the county and the community are pleased with its performance. As such, OLO recommends that the council reauthorize the Bethesda Urban Partnership for another 5-year term and retain the requirement for an OLO evaluation prior to reauthorization. The staff packet includes a draft resolution for this action. OLO also recommends that the council require BUP to develop a new 5-year strategic plan before the next authorization. And as in previous planning processes, BUP should seek feedback from the community through focus groups, surveys, or other means during that process. And OLO also recommends that BUP continue the practice of including a status report on implementing objectives in the previous strategic plan, as this can help the council better assess BUP's performance. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you so much for the detailed presentation. Always great to see our staff from OLO providing their input. Before we ask the committee for a vote on this, I'm going to pass it to the council district member, Andrew Friedson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just be very brief. Thank you, OLO, for the report, and thank you to BUP. And I think the report speaks for itself in terms of the partnership for BUP and county government and with the broader community. And I think the report really reflected that. As someone who lives in the Central Business District and benefits all the time as a resident as well as a council member representing the area, I just really appreciate everything that BUP does and look forward to continuing to support them and partner with them. I think in particular the partnership with Department of Transportation through the PLD and otherwise, and with the Regional Service Center are really critical to having the type of urban district that we want and need in a place like Bethesda. And certainly businesses benefit from that, residents benefit from that, visitors benefit from that, and I think the county overall benefits from that, and it's one of the reasons why Bethesda is such an economic engine for the county. So appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to join here for it, and thank you for this very thorough report and for what it reflects, the great work that BUP is doing on a daily basis with folks who are working virtually around the clock, which I really appreciate. So thank you, and I'll yield back.
Thank you. Council President Evan Glass.
Thank you for the report. Very thorough, and echo the comments of my colleague regarding the work that you all do. So thank you, Jeff, to you and your team and the board and everybody else, and Mr. Fosselman. The only question I have, and this kind of dovetails into the conversation that we're going to have with the third agenda item, in the analysis, the revenue shows that as of FY23, the last fiscal year, 94% of BUP's operating revenue came from the county, and that's the system that we've created. But the non-county revenue was approximately $321,000, and that's fluctuated throughout the years, clearly beginning to rebuild that back from the pandemic. But as we are about to engage in a broader conversation about funding for urban districts and central business districts. Can you explain a little bit more about where that revenue comes from, how it is being built back from $195,000 in FY21, then $253,000 in FY22 to $321,000 now, as we look to emulate other models across the county?
Sure, be happy to. So I would say a majority of that revenue comes from event sponsorship and event income, and obviously that's why it dipped during the pandemic, because we couldn't have that. But some of the other revenue, another large portion of the revenue, is because we're considered a government instrumentality and we're a public entity, we can enter into contracts with any other government entity. So we do trash removal and street sweeping for Silver Spring and Wheaton. It's a benefit for both. We do gain a little bit of revenue, but we also charge them much lower rates than market contractors would. We have a contract with State Highway Administration to do medians outside of our jurisdiction. That it's a break-even contract basically for our services, but it does show up obviously under revenue. And so those kind of contract things that we can do with public entities are the other big portion of
other
revenue.
fee-for-service type
Correct.
programs. But with regard to more of the public-facing events, what are the most revenue-generating events, or how do you
So
describe
Taste of
that?
Bethesda is the largest, of course, and again, keep in mind they're not only with COVID related, but they're also weather related. So if we have bad weather, we're not going to get as many people. So I would say our two largest revenue producing events are Taste of Bethesda and our Fine Arts Festival, because they're our two largest ones. So they bring in revenue from booth sales, they bring in revenue. Taste of Bethesda brings in revenue from ticket sales. It's a shared revenue. We share it back, a lot of it, most of it back with the restaurants, but then we also take a portion of it.
Two excellent events, and so thank you for shedding some light into that, and we'll definitely continue that conversation. But
Yes.
Keep up the good work. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Councilmember Balk.
Thank you. I just wanted to say what a great report, very thorough. And as both Mr. Burton and Mr. Fosselman know, I suffer from BUP envy. So thank you for your report.
I was not gonna say it, but since you said it, you guys, Bethesda Urban Partnership is such an amazing. I know, because of my county council time, but also when I was on the planning board and I did the Bethesda master plan, you guys were so active, and Wheaton is gonna get there. I promise you. Okay, so with that, I think I'm gonna ask the committee to agree with the OLO's recommendations to reauthorize the Bethesda Urban Partnership for another 5-year term and retain the requirement for an OLO evaluation prior to reauthorization, and then require BUP to develop a new 5-year strategic plan before the next reauthorization. Raise your hand if you agree. That approved. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to continue working with you all. The last exciting panel of the day, it's a follow-up from our July conversation with the urban districts, and we'll be talking about, one of the main things that we're going to be talking about is the idea of having a pilot program within those council districts that don't have anything. So think about District 5, 7, and what's the other one? 2. Yeah, couldn't forget you. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ms. Marlene Malkison, and please remember, it is already 11:14, folks. Keep your questions and your comments very brief and straight to the point. Thank you.
Great. So this, as you said, is a follow-up on a very robust discussion the committee had in July. There were a lot of issues you raised. We're only tackling 3 today, 3 important ones, but perhaps one of the most essential ones we need to come back to is the funding strategy for the urban districts and underlying policy as to when there should be shifts from government spending. I'm going to ask Logan to hit the highlights here, and then we'll take up each of the 3 issues.
Good morning. So the three major issues for discussion today are the identification, as the chair mentioned, of other areas throughout the county that would be suitable for what we're referring to as pilot programs that offer services similar to the urban districts, whether we want to call those urban district lights or something similar. Council staff recommends establishing ad hoc resident committees in Germantown, Olney, and White Oak to determine the elements of those pilot programs as a next step, and further options for consideration are outlined later in the packet. The second item is the committee requested more information about whether the planning department would support reinstating maintenance agreements between the county and private property owners for maintaining public spaces and private property, which planning department would support. So council staff would recommend the committee request the planning department reinstate these agreements, and planning department staff is available to discuss that in more detail as well. And the final item is additional information from the Department of Finance about whether the commercial district charge that has been implemented for the new urban district in Friendship Heights would be suitable to adapt either in whole or in part or in some modified form for the original three urban districts of Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton. At the last committee session, the committee requested the Department of Finance provide some additional points for consideration, for committee consideration, and the Department of Finance has done so as outlined in the packet.
Let's move on to the pilot programs. I'm going to start out by saying that we believe that what we're calling urban district lights could be very different depending on location. And there's no reason to say that you need to have a uniform model because the communities we're looking at are very different. And so the idea to kick this off would be to start a working group composed of residents, businesses, representatives of the county, of the district council member, to define what the needs and the desires are. What are the services that would be appropriate? What are the costs of those services? Is there a willingness for businesses or residents to contribute in some form? Certainly not at the level of the three existing urban districts, but in some modified form. And so what we are suggesting is that in each of the three communities, we've identified that this working group is set up. Hopefully maybe to have some short-term wins, short-term things that can be implemented, but also a longer-term vision of what this would look like. And we have listed on page 2 of the memo the types of issues that we think need to be explored. There are many more issues that I'm sure these groups will develop, but that is our recommendation, that you move forward with this pilot initiative. And I'll stop there.
Yes, great. I wonder if anybody has any questions on this particular item before we move on with the rest of the recommendations. I personally love the idea. It pushes the whole spirit of this conversation that we're one county. This is not competition between districts. This is about making sure that each region has something to offer, and it's organized and it's structured in a way that will really uplift our values as a community. This is what this is about, and I wonder if the district council member for Germantown has a question.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for doing this, and as you know, it's been an interest of mine for a very long time. So who would be staffing these working groups?
So we look at this as being a team effort between council staff and executive staff, most likely the existing regional service center staff, but we'd be working with executive staff to determine who that will be depending on the location.
Okay, thank you.
I wonder if Mr. Kens Harmon has any insight to provide representing the county executive on this issue.
Thank you, Chair Fanny Gonzalez. And for the record, my name is Ken Hartman Espada, Director of Strategic Partnerships for the County Executive. Really am excited with this direction. It's something we have talked about for many years, as Councilmember Balcom knows, in these other areas, and something we've recently talked about with our Regional Services Center directors. We're looking forward to see how this comes together. I know we're currently working with the chair in Wheaton with a group of stakeholders that have been identified. We look for partnerships with other council members and other districts to identify the stakeholders. I've spent, when I was regional director in Bethesda, Chevy Chase, I spent from 2010 to when I left working with a group of people in the Pike District, and 10 years after I started working with them, they decided to create their own 501c3, which looks like it's heading down this path that you all are contemplating. But it does take time. It does take buy-in, and it will require a lot of work, not just with residents, but with owners and businesses of different sizes. But we can get this dialogue started. We do have a grant fund for business districts and placemaking districts. We look at our budget, so there is flexibility in the current year's budget to pursue this. The only thing I want to caution is as we start this work, and a need we've identified with the place making district grants, is a need to bring on an expert, a consultant, or someone who's familiar with this space who can help facilitate the community discussions. Maybe Main Streets USA would be a good partner in this endeavor. But looking forward to working with you and your staff on this effort.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ken Hartman Espada. I'm just going to formally state that he has become a new best friend for all the working with him that we're doing together. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass it to Council Vice President Pitts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, really appreciate this recommendation, and I'm excited about it. I just, as somebody who has, with Mr. Hartman, has been very involved in several of these, I just want to note a few things. First of all, deciding on the funding structure and on the boundaries is a very delicate, very challenging thing to come up with. And that is going to require a lot of work, and it's going to be difficult, particularly in certain places where it's not obvious. You don't have clear boundaries of certain people wanting to be in and certain people specifically not wanting to be in, because generally this is going to come with a tax or some type of fee in order to be able to participate. So I think we, eyes wide open on that. As we're seeing in the Pike District, it takes a long time to move these efforts forward. And, that's an area where there was broad consensus. It was not, and continues not to be, particularly controversial. But even in an area of relative consensus, as much consensus as you're probably going to find anywhere in the county, it still takes quite a bit of time just to figure out some of the nuances of this. In the areas where it has been successful, the business community, the people who are actually going to pay the fee, are leading it. And they are doing it, when it's most successful, with significant engagement and outreach with surrounding communities, even beyond the boundaries. So that's the direction that I would suggest here. But I'll just note that this would be the first time where the county is really leading it, not the private sector and the community leading it and coming to the county for support and for help. And so I think that's going to be a challenge of really getting the type of buy-in that is needed, because ultimately what this is we're asking people to pay a fee and for them to agree to that fee and to feel like they're getting something for that fee. And so it doesn't feel like a tax being imposed and a burden, but an added service that they are asking for in the areas that it's been successful, like in Friendship Heights. The business community came and said, please charge us. And here's what we would like to be charged, because here's what we think this is going to cost. And so I just think that needs to be, part of the, part of the thought process there. So I just wanted to note that, because I think it's important. And then I'll just lastly say, while it may be the regional service centers or council staff or some combination or others from the executive branch, ultimately these are going to have to be contracted out services. And so it's really the folks who are monitoring and engaging in the contract. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect the regional service centers or council staff to be doing the day-to-day work, maybe attending meetings, maybe helping to facilitate, but ultimately, even in the Pike District and certainly in Friendship Heights, where we're seeing this, there's outside entities and folks that are being contracted to help. And I think as well, and Mr. Hartman's point, in Friendship Heights, one of the most successful aspects of that, besides all the things that I've talked about, is that the thought leadership really came from one of the foremost people in, with tremendous, decades of experience in the District of Columbia doing similar efforts. And that was instrumental of understanding what works, what doesn't work, what are the pitfalls, what are the challenges. And so I think that that's a really important piece of this as well. But the reality is all of those things cost money. And so I just think that's part of it too. So I yield back and I appreciate it.
If I could just respond, I think that the Council Vice President just hit the nail on the head, and why we're calling this a pilot, because we need to determine whether we can find that balance between services that the community and the businesses want and some sort of funding structure. And I'm hopeful we can, but we won't know until we actually start bringing in the residents and the businesses to see what their needs are and what the funding requirements are, to see if we can find that sweet spot. So that's what we'll be looking for.
And I also appreciate the comments. We discussed this in the previous session on this very topic, so it's a great reminder. And again, this is just a pilot, and not all of them are going to be on the same track. Maybe Germantown will go first, and then, just an example. And I just realized there's a typo here in the document. It should say, Council staff recommends establishing the ad hoc resident and business committees. It's not just about residents, but people who's, the businesses in the area. So we need to add that there. It's a pilot. If we don't start now, when are we gonna move forward? Let's keep it brief. Council President Evan Glass.
I'll be brief. The point that you just made, Madam Chair, about this being an interest of residents and also businesses speaks to, I think, the unique nature of these three locations, right? Not only are they the non-municipal parts of the county that lack an urban district, but Germantown, as the district council member well knows, through leading these efforts of her own, people are pining for it and just need some assistance in getting it done. Only, I will add, does a lot of this, but it is a hodgepodge of the Chamber and the Greater Olney Civic Association and some other nonprofit groups. So solidifying it and helping formalize it, I think, would be beneficial to all of them. And then White Oak is the up-and-comer, who we all want to succeed in for a variety of different reasons and a variety of different ways. And so I think they will need the most amount of help, and we will need to figure out how that works, but all of them deserve this. All of them will have different needs, but I think this is a great place to start.
Councilmember Sales.
Yes, just want to concur with my colleagues. I'm really glad that we're doing a pilot in these parts of our county, and I know that I'm not sure what the solicitation will look like to recruit the advisory board members and what outreach and engagement we're doing prior to the formation of these working groups to educate the existing business owners in these regions about the benefits, costs associated with creating an urban district. Thank you.
Yeah, and we will be working in partnership with the district council members who we think can give us our best insight on who some of the community leaders are and businesses that may be interested, but we'll also seek input elsewhere wherever we can find it. So,
and the chambers and
yes,
other.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Perfect. Based on the comments, I think I can say that all council members who are part of this committee agreed with this recommendation from staff. Would that be accurate? Okay, and let's move on. Second point.
Great, and this one should be fairly straightforward. As we were doing our initial work on urban districts, we found out that the maintenance agreements that laid out when the government was going to be providing services for private property owners and what their payments would be. For some reason, we had stopped having those maintenance agreements, and we're not quite sure how they decreased. I think they ended up being in the hands of the individual urban districts, which may have meant that they weren't consistently, didn't exist consistently, and we are recommending that the planning department, when it's going through its approvals, or DPS, and we still need to figure out exactly the points in time at which these agreements will be looked at, will determine whether there is any private property that is going to be maintained by the government, and make sure that an agreement is in place, both to make sure that we're getting the services they need and that we're being reimbursed when the government is in fact providing services. And we did, as you will see, planning staff did, we asked them to determine whether they thought they can do that, whether it was a good idea, and noting that they would not actually be a party to the agreements, but would simply make sure that they did exist. They were fine with that. And we do have planning staff here. If
Before I have the planning department speak, Mr. Ken Harmon.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chair. And my colleague down the table, Jeff Burton, can also help fill in the gaps. I was regional director when we went through this discussion with our county attorney. Right now, what we're talking about are optional method developer agreements, which used to be a written document between the county attorney and the property owner. In 12 years ago or so, the county attorney said, well, there already are site plan requirements of optional method developers that the public that they either enter into a maintenance agreement, or in the urban districts pay the urban district to maintain the enhancements they put in the public realm. It is an option for them to contract with the government for maintaining the private property, assets on private property. And I don't believe anyone has opted for that. I don't recall that ever happening. Jeff?
So just because I've been doing this for 25 years and I managed the optional method development program in Bethesda with my previous job before I became executive director, there have never been any maintenance agreements in Bethesda with any developer for either on-site public use space or off-site space in the public right-of-way. The county attorney, there was language in previous site plans and planning documents that asked for agreements to be established. And so first, speaking on the on-site public spaces that are private property, we looked at doing that 25 years ago, and property owners were not interested unless we would provide them with full service like their landscaping company would. So that if we would agree to snow removal, which we don't have the capacity to provide like a private landscaping company did, and the county attorney really wasn't interested in having BUP take on liability for snow removal, public art maintenance, plaza maintenance, fountain maintenance. So we backed away from that. And then on the public property and the right-of-way, both county attorneys at the time provided an opinion to planning that said they didn't want BUP to enter into agreements because it would limit the power and authority that already existed in 68A. And so there have never been any agreements in downtown Bethesda with optional method. We just rely on the authority and the power that 68A provides for us as the agent of the county to do the maintenance and to collect.
And if we can add to what Mr. Burton said, so the way this works when the urban districts have a new property that's been approved and is nearing completion, they work understand we work with planning to make sure we understand what's required. The urban district crews do an assessment to identify, well, is that stuff really there? And then we develop an invoice based on actual costs. We don't collect a profit. This is supposed to cover what the urban districts spend, and that gets billed now to the property owners on their tax rolls.
Ms. Malcolmson, and then Mr. Cronenberg.
Yeah, and if I can clarify a couple of things. First of all, the term optional method agreements used to be used because the only properties that had public open space requirements were optional method properties. But the term optional method agreements had everyone confused. So we're suggesting this be maintenance agreements wherever there's maintenance. And I'm really concerned to hear that there are no agreements, but there's just some billing arrangement because we're collecting fees. So what we're simply saying, without making this more elaborate, is every time there's a development, there should be an agreement as to what services are being provided, and that should be in a written agreement, as opposed to there just being some random invoicing and not being able to track when we are providing services where we're collecting fees and not. So we're not trying to make this into a big, agreement or more than it is, but we think we need to document situations where we're collecting money and also examine the ones where we're not to make sure that we're not actually providing services where we're not collecting fees. So this is just a more comprehensive way to look at it.
Thank you for that explanation. The Planning Department, Mr. Cronenberg.
Good morning. For the record, Robert Cronenberg. And we were asked to look at kind of the history of these agreements and really the conditions. And you'll see in the memo that we provided that really it stopped in the 2005-2006 time period where there was a condition for maintenance agreements. We didn't find any agreements, neither in Silver Spring or in Bethesda, that we had on record, but they were conditions that said either you may or you shall enter into an agreement with the urban district of that particular area. And during that time period, it was really Silver Spring and Bethesda that were active. We didn't have anything as much going on in Friendship Heights, or definitely not in Wheaton at the time.
Thank you for that. I think it's fabulous that today we have the chair of the Parks Planning and Parks Committee here. I'm also a member of that committee, so we're two. Do you have a comment on this, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I think some of this is really about the optional method development, and we do have a public benefit points study that we're looking at. This ties into that as well. So I do think this has flagged an issue that we need to work through. I think part of it is related to the urban district, but there's a bigger part of the conversation I think that are related to optional method development. So if it makes sense, I think perhaps following up on this issue that has been flagged through that venue might be the best way to do it in a more holistic way.
So perhaps we can have our recommendation as ECON and then take this at PHP later on. Is that okay? So we'll follow up at PHP, but with that, can we as a committee agree on this recommendation? Do you have any questions, or we can move on? Do you have a question?
I think I agree to have it included in PHP for further discussion. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we can leave it there, and then the final point on the committee staff's recommendation.
Absolutely, and we had during the summer looked at the option for saying, should we look at a new financing mechanism for the existing urban districts using perhaps the model in Friendship Heights, and because the existing urban districts are linked to property tax, there's virtually no flexibility should we ever want to have a change in what that structure is. We are not suggesting, and I want to make this very clear, we're not suggesting going to a different taxing mechanism in order to be able to increase the amount of revenue that is being collected now. So for anyone who's thinking that this is a way to get more revenue at this moment in time, that's not the case. It is to provide the flexibility for the future that if the residents and businesses feel that they want to do something different, that we don't have to say there's no option to do that because of property tax caps. And as the committee noted over the summer, the property tax rate in the urban district has been flat probably for the last 20 years. So there is no flexibility there, and this appears to provide a better mechanism. We did ask the committee asked the finance department to look at it. They did raise some questions that, reasonable questions that are going to have to be looked into before any decision is made to change the funding structure, but we continue to believe that it's something worth exploring and could provide some benefits.
I would say also that to add into those comments, which I think you're absolutely right, it would be great to wait at least for a year to analyze what's happening in the Friendship Heights urban district, how it's working there, at least a year, and then we can start the conversation to see if we can adapt or not. But we need time on this one. Mr. Fritzen?
Yeah, thank you. So, as someone who was involved in crafting the Friendship Heights urban district charge, I just want to make sure that any conversation about this not be an internal conversation, because what we're talking about is completely changing the manner in which this is charged. So it's not just providing flexibility versus not, and I understand some benefits to that. It's a per unit charge, which is a totally different way to generate revenue, which impacts businesses and properties in a significant way. It might be good for some and not as good for others, but that is a very, very significant conversation that needs to involve all of the stakeholders. So I think there's an internal conversation with the county attorney. There's also tax implications and probably GO committee dynamics here. But most importantly to me, it really requires for the impacted property owners who are paying an urban district tax currently to be impacted. I'll also note there is a difference if you're in an urban district and you're paying, whether you're a business or a residence, there are implications there as well. And so if you're changing the number of properties and people who are impacted, you're going to change the charge of the people who are. So, this is, if you go back to the Pike District and you talk about the special district tax and the sensitivities of the boundaries and who's included and who's not included, you look at what has happened in Friendship Heights, you look at Silver Spring and Bethesda and some of those dynamics. It's just a very important conversation that all of the impacted stakeholders be at the center of it, because mostly this is not a question to me of legal dynamics. We can work through those issues as we did in Friendship Heights. It's really a question of the impacted stakeholders and what willingness is there to do, because the only reason why urban districts work is because people are willing to pay an additional fee for enhanced services. If that goes away, then we don't have this broad buy-in, and so to make a change is something that is going to require to have that broad buy-in. So I just want to make sure I noted that, because there's a lot of sensitivities here.
Thank you for that, Council President Evan Glass.
Yeah, I appreciate Vice President Fritzen sharing the work that he did regarding Friendship Heights, and that clearly is a different model than what we've been utilizing. And and I think moving into a different model is what we need to do, because it's why the T&E committee just last week or 2 weeks ago had a conversation about the parking lot districts, because I don't think that is a sustainable model anymore. And Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton all utilize funds from the parking lot districts, whereby the revenue generated from parking helps support these community revitalization, economic development efforts. And as we look to not only expanding this model to 3 other areas through a pilot review, I guess, we need to continue having this conversation about the parking lot districts and the fees as we continue to turn over or give away county-owned parking facilities, namely in Silver Spring and Bethesda, for redevelopment purposes. We are giving away these spots and or garages. Most of them are surface lots, and so we're replenishing the amount of parking spaces, and I just think it's an outdated model, especially as we de-emphasize parking and emphasize walking and transit and biking and other multimodal forms of transportation to our urban areas. And so again, we don't have the answers now, but dovetailing Vice President Friedson's comments, we need to think of these formulas in a different way. I'm glad the T&E committee is engaging in that. I know that the chair was listening. You were here. You were at that committee because of the importance to this. But it's something that we have to figure out because what we're currently doing, I don't think, is working. So thank you for this conversation.
Love it. Thank you for that. You hit the nail right on the spot. Do I have anybody else wanting to speak? Yes, sir. Last, very brief.
Yeah, so the recommendation here, I just want to put a fine point on this. It says educate. I don't think that's sufficient at all, just to be very clear. There are 3 impacted organizations that we already have set up that are made up of the relevant stakeholders: WUDAC, Silver Spring Urban District Advisory Committee, and the BUP Board. Those are representatives of the folks who are going to be directly impacted by this. So I would suggest that before any real serious discussions of moving in a different direction occur, that those organizations at the very least be at the center of that, not to educate people once we've already made a decision, and the government telling, organizations how we're going to completely upend their business model and what they're being charged, but to engage them in the beginning of the process. So that would be my suggestion, which is different than what was suggested in the staff recommendation.
Absolutely, and if I can summarize what I think I heard the committee saying, we need to continue to look into this. We've got a problem in terms of the parking lot districts and funding overall. We need to make sure that the involved players, the current residents and businesses that pay in urban districts are intricately involved right from the very beginning in consideration of options, and we should not move too quickly because this is first being tried in Friendship Heights and we could learn a lot from that effort. So if that's what is that a fair summary of
that? Is a very fair summary. Okay. And so we will follow up probably in at least a year on this, and hopefully we'll have the stakeholders of the Friendship Heights Urban District here to share their experience with us. With that,
I think that and thank you for summarizing that, the pilots will provide information in terms of alternatives, because we have to look at alternatives other than a tax, property tax. So I think we'll get a lot more information as we move forward with pilots.
Love it. Great comment.
Madam Chair, may
yes.
I slightly interrupt, just add something I think it's relative to the conversation. I agree with Councilmember Friedson's assessment of that the new formula may or may not work for everyone that's located in these areas, but some more food for thought and to digest is that the Pike District, Friendship Heights, and Bethesda Urban Partnership are all in my turf, for lack of better words, and so staff, TJ Jantz specifically, is behind me, who's our community projects manager. Oh, and by the way, we have a new urban district manager, Brandon Stuckey's here, so we're happy to have him on board. We did a quick analysis using the Friendship Heights model on the Bethesda section, and it netted $1.5 million more than we're currently. Yes, so that's some food for thought, but again, that may not work for everyone.
And that would be only if you took the rates that are being charged in Friendship Heights and applied them, which clearly I do not think we would do. So
okay, perfect. Let's stay tuned. Let's wait for a year to evaluate how it's working over there. Thank you so much, Mr. Fusselman, for that food for thought comment that you made. And stay tuned. Nobody's rushing here. We're looking at different models for the pilots, for the current districts. At the end of the day, we want Montgomery County to succeed and be vibrant, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here with our beautiful diversity in each region that we have in Montgomery County. With that, my friends, thank you so much for coming here today, and this meeting is adjourned.